Review bombing is certainly not a new phenomenon in the gaming world, yet I have the impression that it's spun out of control with the recent Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, where the wrong game of the franchise was review bombed. And while we can all agree that faking a review is wrong, sharing this content is a powerful tool players have to send a message, to state disapproval and stand their grounds for a greater cause. So is review bombing ever justified? Are there better methods to achieve the same goal? Roll the intro. Review bombing needs no long explanation. It is the act of drastically reducing the user score of a given video game in various websites by posting a provocative 0 out of 10 followed by a written critique. Most websites use a scale of grades, meaning that even a single low number can drag the whole average down, damning the game's reputation. You might not know this, but it is quite rare that a truly awful game is review bombed. If anything, you might find players talking positively about a forgettable title. Disney's Coding the White House for a Nintendo DS is a game with review scores of 4, but a user score of 9.2. Games that are review bombed are often big budget titles that either disappoint fans, had shady post-launch changes, or, to be honest, any reason to start a fire will do. Later in the video I will bring examples for all scenarios. You might be surprised how different the reasons can be for a game to be review bombed, but before diving into the specifics, I wish to address the elephant in the room. Is review bombing bad? The answer is yes, but not for the reasons you might think of, and not to the same degree. In the first half of the video, I will be addressing the morality of review bombing, explaining why it is overall negative for the community, but why some users, even with good intentions, still do it. In the second half, however, I will explain how review bombing is often a consequence of a bad system put in place by websites, and how it is the result of a poor understanding on how review works. So, without further ado, why is review bombing a net negative for the gaming world? To review a game is not an easy task, as I hope I made clear in countless past videos. Reviewing requires both a critical eye, able to spot even the smallest of details, as well as a good understanding of gaming as a whole. It would be naive for a player who only plays one single game like GTA 5 to review Age of Empires 2, since they would lack the tools to objectively judge the strategy game. Likewise, it would be disingenuous to put in the same plate a small indie game like Super Kinemagic Zero and Super Mario Odyssey, since the scopes and the budgets for both games are not on the same order of magnitude. There are of course many ways to write reviews. The style I have in my video reviews is different from other videos in the platform, neither better or worse, just unique. As unique as everyone's points of view on a given game can be. However, there can be dishonest reviews, people talking very negatively about a game they barely even played, and people who blindly adore a video game series disregarding the various shortcomings and malpractices developers had when making it. There are reviews that are complete and useful to the readers, and reviews that are misleading, or at the very least naive in their analysis. Review bombed games are filled with very poorly written reviews that often do not even tackle the game itself, but only one specific aspect that made fans furious. Some games were review bombed due to their exclusivity in one platform. Borderlands 3 was a temporary exclusive in the Epic Games Store, Red Dead Redemption 2 was not available in the PC at launch, Fire Emblem Three Houses is an exclusive for the Nintendo Switch, and many more cases. All of these games were flooded with negative reviews not by the quality of the game themselves, but for external factors. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Animal Crossing New Horizons was review bombed because it lacked cloud saving, Total War Rome 2 for adding female generals in a later update, Crusader Kings 3 for increasing the price of the game and its many DLCs in some countries, and Wolfenstein 2 and The Last of Us Part 2 for, well, political points of view. Even the absence of translations can be a reason to attack a developer. Dying Light 2 was review bombed by Italians because the game lacked an Italian dubbing. I even remember reading someone questioning the developers why the game was dubbed in Polish but not in Italian. And to that I say, what? The game was developed in Poland, what are you on about? Certa gente. To be fair to review bombers, there were some games that definitely deserve criticism. Fallout 76 and Homefront: The Revolution were awful games, and even games like Cyberpunk 2077 and No Man's Sky, that were not bad but had expectations too high to be sustained, definitely had reasons to be disliked. And of course, games like Star Wars Battlefront 2 have very good reasons to be called out for their malpractices. But is review bombing the best way to share this criticism? Yes, a game can have its flaws, but distorting the true picture of a game for a personal complaint is petty at best and disruptive at worst. I may or may not agree with some of the reasons why developers need to be called out for, but transforming reviews as weapons rather than tools is not helping anyone. Some of the games I've mentioned are great, or at least decent, and they do not deserve 0s out of 10s. Bad reviews are bad, even if the critique that players post to the developers is fair. I do not enjoy reading a review where the writer is criticizing the game not based on the quality, or even just the personal enjoyment they had with a given title, but based on an oddly specific critique they themselves are not even care too much about, but are repeating from other review bombers. That is not a review, and it should not be considered as such. Review bombing undermines the points of review as a whole, meaning that it's not much review bombing as straight up vandalism, since real honest reviews are covered by the noise of protests. The most effective way to damage developers who have messed up is to simply not play their games, hit them in their wallet. I understand that the reason to review bomb a game is frustration, but rather than to damage the review system, damage the publishers by no longer supporting them. If anything, publishers could claim that their title was review bombed unreasonably and the quality of their game is actually high. And since reviews are vandalized anyways, how can you prove them wrong? Only honest reviews are powerful, respected by other users, meaning that review bombing does not reach its desired goal of leveling a critique. But I did mention earlier in the introduction that it takes two to tango, that the problem does not only rely on the fanbase, but also on the system. Review bombing takes advantage of a flawed system that needs to update, to tackle and overcome this type of vandalism, not to appease it. Before you're wondering, no, I'm not advocating for removing the user score entirely, since not only that would solve nothing, but if anything, it would ignite a greater fire. The problem is not that a user can leave reviews, if anything that is a blessing. The problem is when honest reviews and fake ones are made indistinguishable from one another. There are various websites where players can leave a review, but for the purposes of this discussion, I will only use two big examples, Metacritic and the Steam store page. In my opinion, the former website is an example of a weak system put in place for user reviews, while Steam, even if it might not be perfect, is able to tackle much more effectively the phenomenon for review bombing. The differences between the two are actually quite noticeable, starting with the grading system itself. Metacritic uses a 0 to 100 based system for grades, while Steam uses a simpler thumbs up or thumbs down. If you are one of the 59 people who have watched my older video game reviews don't need grades, like the amazing, awesome, fantastic downloads, then you know that I'm not a big fan of grades in general when it comes to reviews. They can be misleading, everyone interprets the skill differently, they summarize reviews too much, and above all, for the purposes of this video, averages are not reliable on a big scale. If a game is decent and on average people are rating it a 7, you only need a handful of people to rate the game a 0 to drag the number much lower than its true value. In Metacritic, many are the games where the user average are distorted due to these heavy low grades. On Steam on the other hand, the options are but two, liked or disliked, meaning that yes, a number of users can still drag the average down, but it takes many more people. This measure makes sure that every dislike is equal, not that a well-written negative review that hands out a 5 is worth less than a troll comment that leaves 0, since that 0 will have a greater impact on the overall final grade. Furthermore, Steam allows people to observe how much a player has played a review game at the time of writing, something Metacritic lacks. This means that it is quite easy to spot fake reviews of players who have barely touched a title and players who have played more, and thus were able to see the game more completely. Oh, and keep in mind that in Steam, only players who have played the game can leave a review, another great deterrent Metacritic misses. Metacritic did add the feature that players are only able to review a new game days after it's released, to deflate the potential review bombings. But this is a measure to postpone the inevitable, and thus far I do not believe it had much of an effect, but feel free to prove me wrong. Steam does not have such feature, but it does display a graph on when positive and negative reviews were published, meaning that noticeable peaks of negative reviews can be distinguished rather than having them permanently damage the game's reputation. A last interesting detail about Steam reviews is that users are able to rate the usefulness of the review, to reward it, and even to rate if it was funny. This makes better reviews emerge above the rest, and even the ironic ones are at the very least flagged that way. In Metacritic, such interactivity between users is missing, making it even easier to vandalize the user score. User ratings are very important, and it is equally important to have in place a good system, one that encourages players to review honestly the games they've played. Sure, malicious 0 grades can be removed by moderators, but rather than to rely on manual checks, it is far better to make a better system that alleviates the problem before it becomes too big to handle. Review bombing has been part of gaming culture since forever, and unfortunately it will not disappear anytime soon. While I find that some causes are more noble than others, damaging the reputation of a game by discrediting the opinions of millions of players who have wrote genuine reviews is a malpractice I condemn. I understand that reviews are a quick way to share discontent. Even I, many years ago, review-bombed Pokémon Sword and Shield due to the many controversies the games had at launch, but I believe sharing discontent in other ways, such as videos, posts, comments, and of course not buying the game, can reach the same goal. For this very reason, I removed that old review of mine from Metacritic. I was bitter, true, but I do not need to ruin it for everyone else. On the other hand, platforms that allow users to grade games need to put more effort into making user reviews more valuable and less diluted, like Steam has done for the past years. This may not single-handedly solve the issue, but it's a good first step forward. If you made it this far, I wanted to thank you one too many review bomb times for watching today's video. It has been a while since I've last done a video about reviews and review writing. I know it is not quite a hot topic, but I still enjoy discussing it from time to time. If you liked the video, do not forget to leave it a like, to share it and to subscribe for more. I wish you all a wonderful day, and until next time, arrivederci!